The millionaire dressed as a poor man to test his son and was devastated. The first warning came early before the sun had fully risen. 4 missed calls on Dante Amaral's cell phone. He ignored them, thought it was just another system glitch or some last-minute urgency the team would take care of. It was the day of his official presentation as heir to Orbi Express. Nothing was supposed to go wrong. But something did. The notification that finally woke him up for real wasn't an alarm or a call from his father or his girlfriend. It was a simple, cold message sent by Ulysses Prado, the logistics supervisor. Delivery man missing. Urgent. A chill ran down his spine. Dante tried to stay calm, but he knew this wasn't routine. Within minutes, he was putting on his blazer, fingers still trembling as he buttoned his shirt. The missing delivery man's name was familiar, Nestor Pacheco, a long-time loyal employee, one of those who carried the company's emblem as if it were a family name. The problem wasn't just the disappearance, it was the delivery's final destination, Baixada do Norte, a place even mail carriers avoided. If Nestor went there, it wasn't by accident. Dante arrived at headquarters already consumed by doubts. Everything seemed normal. The marketing team setting up the backdrop for the press conference, the secretaries arranging the directors' schedules. But if you paid attention, you could sense the tension in the air. Eyes avoiding contact, managers whispering, footsteps quicker than usual. No one spoke openly about what was happening, but everyone knew. Dante's own father, Osvaldo Amaral, treated the matter with the coldness of someone shutting a window on a cloudy day. Quick, practical, disposable. He said they'd deal with the problem after the event. Until then, absolute silence. During the ceremony, Dante took the stage, smiled for the cameras, shook hands, and posed for pictures. Outside, the scandal that still had no name was approaching like a runaway train. He held the microphone firmly, but his mind was miles away, trying to understand what would drive an experienced employee to go off route and vanish as if he'd never existed. Hours later, far from the spotlight, he stormed into the monitoring room with Ulysses at his side. The footage of Nestor's route cut off abruptly in the middle of the recording. A technical error, they claimed, but Dante knew when something had been deliberately erased. He demanded to review the restricted access files. What they recovered didn't show much, just the back of the truck parked on a dark street and a shadow approaching, swift, precise, almost invisible. An arm flashed for a second. On it, a tattoo, a black phoenix. Dante recognized the symbol immediately. It wasn't just any tattoo. It was the same one his father had on his chest since the 90s. He went home in silence, his head in turmoil. He tried to piece it all together, but nothing fit. How did Nestor leave with a package that wasn't registered? Who ordered the delivery? Why didn't any director want to investigate? The questions multiplied. That night, he called Rafael Montenegro, his childhood friend, who still worked in the company's tactical sector. Rafael hesitated before saying anything, but slipped out a disturbing detail. There were deliveries that never went through the system. A parallel route. Only a few veterans knew how it worked, and Nestor was one of them. Dante hung up with a knot in his stomach. The thought that his family might be involved in something like this, hidden in the basement of a company built with so much pride, made him sick. So he sought out João, the quiet veteran who blended in among the younger workers, but had been at Orbe since before Dante was born. He found him in the warehouse, organizing boxes like he was arranging his own past. He didn't need to say much. A look into João's eyes was enough. João let out a short phrase, almost a whisper, but one that cut deep. Carry enough boxes and you learn to recognize the weight of a lie. Dante didn't sleep that night. He rewatched the footage dozens of times, stopping at the same second, staring at the tattoo. He remembered a childhood scene, himself small, sitting on his father's lap, asking what that bird on his chest meant. It's a phoenix, Osvaldo replied. Because I'm reborn, always. Now it all made sense, or almost all of it. One question remained: what was in that package? Dante was no longer the same after seeing that footage, the tattoo, the shadow, the silence. It consumed him like a fever that wouldn't break, like an endless thirst. While Orbe Express celebrated the new leadership cycle on social media and Loretta posted a selfie captioned, "So proud of you," all he could think about was the missing package. And who had sent that man, the one with the phoenix tattoo, to intercept the delivery? Osvaldo Amaral still carried the same imposing presence as always. The difference now was that Dante noticed what he had once ignored. His father's eyes were too cold. His smile seemed rehearsed, his advice scripted. That man hadn't built an empire through effort. He had built it with fear, with control, with secrets. What else was he hiding? Dante tried to bring it up. Casually asked about Nestor. Osvaldo brushed it aside with a dry comment, like swatting away a fly. Said they were already investigating, but the company couldn't afford to appear vulnerable. A scandal in the press could destroy contracts. Investors don't buy uncertainty. That wasn't an answer. It was a warning. In the days that followed, Dante began to see headquarters differently. He noticed how managers barely greeted one another, how departments operated on fragmented information, how routes and drivers seemed managed by a shadow system no one admitted controlling. In this murky environment, he sought out Dr. Ramiro Perez, the family's long-standing lawyer, a man with a calm voice and pressed suits, known for his ability to solve anything without ever going to court. Dante asked for access to the company's internal files. He wanted information on untracked deliveries, route deviations, audit records. Ramiro listened in silence. When Dante finished, he simply folded his arms and said that certain data required board approval, and above all, that some questions could be very costly. Dante understood. That was also a "don't ask." The feeling of being cornered grew. Every step seemed watched. Every click in Orb's system triggered some invisible alarm. Even Loretta, his girlfriend, started acting strangely. She avoided company talk, changed the subject when he mentioned Nestor. She was distant, formal, as if tiptoeing through a minefield she already knew well. Dante grew suspicious. He discreetly checked her recent building visits. He found an unusual entry, 12:43 a.m., 2 days before the ceremony. And she wasn't alone. She was with a legal executive, one supposedly removed months earlier for ethical reasons. His stomach turned, but he couldn't confront her yet. He needed proof and time. It was Raphael who unintentionally opened the next door. They met for a quick chat in the company cafeteria. Dante brought up the delivery system, the black routes. Raphael hesitated, tried to deflect, but Dante pressed. Then he gave in. He said those routes had always existed, run by a small group of employees, almost all veterans. Payment in cash, orders given verbally. No signatures, no tracking. Invisible freight. Dante asked why no one ever reported it. Raphael answered with a bitter laugh. Anyone who reports it disappears. Back at the system, Dante tried to cross-check data. He searched for Nestor's delivery tracking code, even knowing he'd find nothing. But a clue surfaced where he least expected. A fragment of a record, nearly erased, linked to an address. 44 Dahlia Street, Aurora Nova community. It was far, it was dangerous, and it was exactly where he needed to go. The next day, Dante drove to the outskirts of Aurora Nova. He left the car a few blocks from the main entrance and went in on foot, a cap pulled low over his eyes and a plain backpack on his shoulders. He didn't want to attract attention. He needed to pass as just another delivery guy or a lost visitor. The community was alive, noisy, full of kids playing in the narrow streets and adults sitting in plastic chairs with watchful eyes. He made his way to the address. A simple house, low wall, open windows. At the door, A stern-faced woman stared at him without fear. It was Donna Conceção. Dante introduced himself only as someone looking for a missing friend. He mentioned Nesta's name. She wasn't startled, didn't even pretend not to know. She just nodded slightly and said he was one of the few who delivered more than boxes. The air froze. A silence full of unspoken truths. She didn't explain what was in the packages, but she mentioned that, a day before disappearing, Nesta had left her grandson, Noé, a small folded note inside a matchbox. Dante read it right there. Shaky, faint letters. "If I don't come back, what I carried was the 44. It was meant to vanish." The reference to the house number didn't seem like a coincidence, but what had he carried, and who wanted it erased? Before he left, Donna Conceção said one last thing, looking him straight in the eyes, unflinching. "These deliveries aren't for people like you to understand. They're for shutting the mouths of the powerful." Back in the car, Dante felt the world collapsing under his feet. Orbe Express, which was supposed to symbolize efficiency and innovation, was neck-deep in a web of favors, blackmail, and silencing. And now he knew his next step. He needed to break into the old company warehouse, deactivated years ago, hidden at the back of the same community, a place that officially no longer existed. But everything inside him screamed, "That's where the truth is buried." The warehouse entrance looked forgotten by time, the rusty iron gate, weeds growing along the sides, the faded sign where once you could read Orb Express Operational Center, Sector C, officially shut down. In practice, a black hole spitting out the kind of deliveries no one wanted to see. Dante wasn't alone. Nicolau Cestari, the friend who never wanted to climb the corporate ladder, the one who stayed in the shadows, the silent observer, had decided to go with him. He was afraid, yes, but he knew that place held more than boxes. It held answers, and maybe danger. There was no security, but the padlock was new. Nicolau broke it with an improvised crowbar, and the door creaked open. Inside, the dust floated like an old smoke curtain. The ceiling lights still worked, or someone kept them working. Corridors, shelves, several compartments chained shut. In the corner, a computer covered with a tarp. When Dante turned it on, a rudimentary system flickered to life. Nothing like the sleek interface at headquarters. It was raw, cold, a black screen with white code. And there, among lines of code and hidden folders, he found what he was looking for. Records of Route 44. Deliveries made to Rua Dahlia, Aurora Nova, dating back 3 years. More than 30 shipments, none in Orbe's official system. Further in, he found images, internal cameras, employees in uniform packing boxes that weren't appliances, food, or anything a delivery company should be moving. It was paper, lots of paper, sealed envelopes stamped with government seals, signatures, contracts, and in one of them, zoomed in, a name stood out clearly: Congressman Aureo Villar, Loretta's father. Dante recoiled from the screen as if he'd taken a punch to the chest. This was more than smuggling, it was blackmail, and it came from inside. In the background, Nicolau whispered that he heard footsteps. It wasn't paranoia. Someone was entering the warehouse. They slipped out a side door and ducked into an alley behind the building, where they ran into a gray-bearded man with sharp eyes. Aurelio Salcedo, a former Orbe employee, fired without explanation. Now a local activist in Aurora Nova, known for defending the community from invasions and shady interests. "You stirred up a hornet's nest, kid," he said, looking at Dante with a mix of respect and pity. Aurelio knew. He knew everything, and he started to tell it. For years, Orbe had used warehouses like this to store leaked documents from politicians, rival companies, even judges. They used the delivery network itself to circulate information under threat, keeping people under control. The package Nestor carried was the most sensitive of all, proof of money laundering tied to shell companies connected to Congressman Villar. Nestor knew what he was carrying, and that's why he disappeared. He wanted to hand it to the prosecutor's office, Aurelio said. He thought it was time to break the cycle, but someone intercepted him. Dante remembered the tattoo, the phoenix, the man's arms swapping the package, the code 44. He remembered Loretta, her late-night visit to headquarters, the name of the dismissed executive. Nothing was coincidence. Everything was connected. At that moment, it became clear Orbe Express wasn't just a company. It was a machine of influence, a facade with real roots running underground, and he, Dante, was the new face of that rotten structure. Leaving the community, he got a call from Dr. Ramiro Perez, short, to the point, a summons to talk. "The company needs you clear-headed, Dante. We need to set the course together. Stop digging." A threat disguised as advice. That night, Dante went to Loretta's apartment. She welcomed him as if nothing had happened, smiled, asked about his day, poured wine, but something lingered in her eyes, a weariness, a poorly hidden guilt. He didn't mention her father's name, or the address, or the package. He just asked, baiting the hook, "Do you trust me?" Loretta hesitated. Long seconds. "I trust, as much as I can trust anyone." It was enough. Dante left knowing the game was bigger than he'd thought, and that he was now, finally, at the center of it. Dante woke up different. His body still moved on autopilot, coffee, shower, pressed shirt. But his mind was no longer the same. In the past days, he had seen the flip side of what they called a legacy. He discovered that the last name he bore was more than influence. It was a chain, and now came the time to choose. That morning, he sat in Orbe's boardroom, surrounded by familiar faces. Osvaldo Amaral at the center, expression unshaken. Beside him, the family lawyer, Dr. Ramiro Perez, opening a folder with surgical calm. "We need your decision, Dante," Ramiro said. "You have the chance to take full control of the company. With your clean image, you can turn the crisis around, keep the contracts, and make sure nothing leaks." The proposal was clear: a position, a pact, and eternal silence. Outside, the city was buzzing. The press was beginning to suspect strange movements behind Orbe's walls. A small leak had surfaced the night before, mention of a black root in peripheral communities. Not enough for a full scandal, but enough to raise alarms. Dante listened, eyes fixed on the window. The city seemed far away. The Santa Esperanza sky hung low and grey. In his head, flashes of everything he'd seen: Donna Concecion's eyes, the warehouse records, Loretta's father's name on secret documents, Loretta's silence, and Nestor's note. "If I don't come back, what I carried was the 44. It was meant to vanish." He stood up, said he needed time. Hours later, he was at Rafael Montenegro's apartment. His friend already knew. His eyes betrayed it all: fear, guilt, fractured loyalty. "You knew from the start," Dante said, voice steady. Rafael didn't deny it. He only said he'd tried to protect him, that he thought he was doing the right thing. "You protected the company, not me." The friendship died there, in silence. Dante drove aimlessly through the city, past Orbe's routes, past the corners where white trucks moved like trained ants, past the building where he'd started as an intern, past the restaurant where he and Loretta had made plans. Every place now looked like a fake set, as if it had all been staged. By late afternoon, he walked into the office of an independent journalist, known for exposing corruption schemes and threatened more than once for it. Dante handed him an envelope. Inside were the records, the images, the names. Everything. "I don't want money or credit." "You're doing this alone?" Dante smiled for the first time in days. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The news exploded the next morning. Corruption and blackmail scheme hits Orbe Express and Santa Esperanza politicians. Congressman Oreo Villar named in leaked dossier. Missing delivery man may have been silenced. Images of the warehouse, video excerpts, screenshots of Route 44 records. Everything was published. The city flipped upside down. Investigations were launched. Careers ended. Orbe Express's reputation collapsed in real time. Osvaldo Amaral was arrested 3 days later. He left the building in handcuffs, chin held high. When he saw Dante on the sidewalk, surrounded by reporters, he showed no anger. He just muttered as he passed, "You're still my son." The words stuck in Dante's mind, not as an insult, but as a warning. Loretta sought him out days later in a quiet cafe in the West Zone. She looked worn down, disguised behind sunglasses, voice low. She didn't apologize. She just admitted she knew, said her father was part of it, that she had tried to protect him from the scandal, but deep down she knew Dante would uncover it all. He listened, but said nothing, just paid the bill and walked out without looking back. Weeks later, Dante left the city. No statements, no social media posts. He didn't want applause, didn't want spotlight. He wanted silence, time, distance. He moved to a small village far from the capital where no one called him the owner's son or Orbe's director. Just Dante. There one morning he received a letter with no sender, a plain brown envelope. Inside, a hand-drawn picture with colored pencils, a delivery man with a backpack standing in front of an open door. The caption, written in childlike letters, "You delivered what matters most." It was from Noé, Donna Concecion's grandson. Dante smiled, and for the first time in a long time, breathed without the weight on his chest. Would you have the courage to deliver everything, even knowing the price? Comment only "I'd deliver" or "I'd stay silent." And if this story made you feel something, hit the like button and subscribe for more truths no one dares to tell.